Okay, so this is under the week 4 reading outline. So the first thing we're going to talk about is polar tracking. So polar tracking in your status bar down at the bottom right of your screen. This is polar tracking. Polar tracking, when using a command, restricts your cursor to specified angles. And to tell what angles yours is currently set to, press the little down arrow just to the right of it. So right now I have mine set to 30, 60, 90, 120, and so on. So I'm going to type in PL for polyline. Click anywhere on the screen, doesn't really matter. And either press the button to turn it on or hit F10 on your keyboard. And as you can see, currently at 0, you see the green projection line or projected line going to the right. And then about right at 30 degrees, you see it again. 60 degrees, 90 degrees, 120, and so on, all the way around. And you can change that number to anything you would like, or the presets that you would like. And this one's 4590. And that is polar tracking. So I'm going to do this slightly out of order. I'm going to skip down to dynamic input. That is F12 on your keyboard. So if you notice on the bottom right of to the bottom right of my crosshairs, you will see the little dialogue or the words saying specify next point or, and then it'll have a some numbers that equal the or the length, and then it'll have the angle. So that is dynamic input. That allows you to see what is on a shortened version of what's on the command line, but it's right next to your cursor, so you're typically looking where your cursor is, and you'll see that. Some people like that, some people don't. My personal preference is to have it on. I love seeing what that is. I don't like having to look down at the command line constantly. So that is dynamic input. So then jump back to direct distance, I am going to have to turn off the dynamic input. So I'm going to hit F12 on my keyboard. And as you can see, that turned off. So direct distance is when you type anything and hit enter, any number and hit enter under line, polyline, circle. You could do direct distance for radius, anything like that. So 12. As you can see, it made a line of 12. That is direct distance. You can do that with most every basic drawing command. That's under the draw panel. The next thing that we are going to do is ortho. So ortho is F8 on your keyboard. So currently I have the polyline command going. As you can see, I can move my cursor around wherever I would like it to be. And I'm free to go to any angle I would like. So if I hit polar, F8 on my keyboard, or polar would be yeah. Um, yeah, ortho mode. Yeah, my bad. I was saying the wrong thing. Ortho. You turn on ortho, which is F8 on your keyboard. It restricts your cursor to be vertical or horizontal only. Move your cursor up this way as much as you want, but it's still going to stay horizontal. That is ortho, or F8 on your keyboard. And this is the button for ortho mode. Next thing we are going to do is coordinate entry. So with coordinate entry, if you have dynamic input turned on, the first coordinates you put in would be correct to those coordinates that you enter. Everything after that would be from the coordinate that you first entered or the previous coordinate that you entered. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to, for my first coordinate, I'm going to do 0, 0 for the origin. So as you can see, stand by, going to turn off ortho. And then I'm going to do, for the next one, I'm going to do 1, 1, which in this case is correct because it is from 0. So I'm going to do 2, 2 for the next one. And that was 2 over and 2 up from this point, which is your previous point. So I'm going to do 3, 2. As you can see, it's still going from this point because I have dynamic input turned on. So I'm going to type in U multiple times to get back to where I'm just at the origin point. And I'm going to turn off dynamic input by hitting F12 on my keyboard. So I'm going to do the same thing, 1, 1, and then I'm going to do 2, 1. And as you can see that it took it from the origin point, my first point that I entered when I started the command. So it went over 2 and up 1. So I could do the same thing, 3, 2. So now it went over 3 and up 2, and that is coordinate entry. And we already talked about dynamic input. Next thing we're going to talk about is object snaps. Object snaps are very important, and you have seen them multiple times as we have been going along. But you probably haven't known what they are. So first off, let me start that over. So object snaps, it is this button right here, or F3 on your keyboard. I am a keyboard person, so I always press F3. I do not like to move my mouse all the way down here to press that button. So if you press the down arrow directly to the right of the button, it will bring up all of your object snaps. So there's endpoint, midpoint, center, geometric center, node, quadrant, intersection, extension, insertion, perpendicular, tangent, nearest, apparent intersection, and parallel. To save time on the video, I am going to just quickly describe them instead of demonstrating them. If you want a demonstration of a specific one, let me know and I can show you. For this, I'm not going to talk about a couple of them, specifically insertion and node. Those are the two that I will not be talking about. So endpoint is the endpoint of any line or rectangle. For a rectangle, it's where two lines or arcs touch. That is an endpoint, or just the endpoint of a line or arc. The midpoint, that is the middle point of a line or arc. The center would be the center point of an arc or a circle or an ellipse. We're not going to talk about node. Quadrant would be the top, bottom, right, or left of a circle. You can also get quadrant points on fillets, arcs, or I'm not 100% sure on arcs, but definitely fillets. Intersection would be the point at which two objects cross. Extension would be if you have two lines that are perpendicular to each other but are not crossing, you will be able to snap to the extension of one of those lines. Perpendicular, as you can tell, it'll give you the perpendicular point. Tangent would be the tangent point of a circle, based on where your line is at. Next one is nearest. Nearest is anywhere on a line, nearest to your cursor, to where your crosshairs are located. Uh, Next one is apparent intersection. Apparent intersection is useful when you have two lines that are at different elevations. Everything talked about in this coursework is all going to be dealing with 2D, so you would not have to do that. Parallel would just give you the point that is, it'll allow you to go parallel to another object. And those are the object snaps. Object snaps are used constantly in drafting and drawing of plans. They guarantee or they ensure that you are having, such as two endpoints, you are ensuring that they are touching. Because there are times that if you do not have your lines together and you don't use, there are times if you don't use object snaps that your lines won't be touching. So I can zoom in and get as precise as possible. But if you were to zoom in more, you can still see that they are not touching. And AutoCAD is all about accuracy, so turn on my object snaps, and no matter how much you zoom in, they are touching. Those two endpoints are directly on top of each other. They are touching. So that is object snaps. Next one is object snap tracking, which is F11 on your keyboard, or it is this button right here. So what that allows you to do is with your whatever object snaps you want. So for example, this endpoint, you can drag along and it'll have that green line going vertically, or I could drag it along to the left and have it horizontally. So I could, if I want something that I know is parallel, I can select that line, and for example, I could turn on ortho, and I can ensure that these are going to be parallel. They're going to be the exact same length, and they are basically the exact same line, just in different locations. So that is object snap tracking. That works with any of your object snaps and any object. Next thing we are going to talk about is offset. So the offset command, that is going to be, where is it at? Right here. This is the offset button under the modify panel in your ribbon. So like I've said before, I like to do things from keyboard shortcuts. So OF on your keyboard is offset. And offset allows you to offset a line, make a copy of the line, or just make another line and erase the previous one. Any distance that you specify. So it is asking for the distance, so I'm going to do 1. Click on my line, and you can see that it is offset. And I can keep on selecting it until I hit escape. So that is the basics of offset. Now, more specifically, so I'm not going to go over through because that takes you into the z-axis, and we are not going to be talking about the z-axis. Then there is erase. That is the next one. So what this does, erase source object after offsetting. I'm going to select yes, select my distance of 2, and as you can see, it grays out the object that you initially selected, and it shows you where your object will be. So it deletes the object, your original object, and will make it give you the next line. So that is the offset with erase, and like everything else, you have to go back in to turn that off. So what I'm going to do, so I have a few other layers in this because I created a template with layers. and we'll be going over layers next. So I'm going to start the offset command again, and I will select L for layer. And first off, I messed that up. I am going to do center, my layer called center. Make that my current one, and I'm going to start the offset command again. Select layer, and then you are given two choices. It will create the copy, the offsetted copy of the line, and make that copied offset line to your current layer, or it could have it to your source. By default, it is source, so I'm going to select current, and I will select one, and you'll notice on you right here, next to certain commands, it will say a number in sideways arrows, I guess you want to call them. That is your previous input, and if you see that and that's the input that you are going to do, you can just hit enter and it will select that distance. So I'm going to offset this line, and as you can see, it created my line, a copy of my line with a different layer, and that is the center layer. So next thing we're going to talk about is layers. So there's a couple locations that you can access your layers. I'm not going to talk about this one just because this will be talked about later on. But this is your layers panel in the ribbon. Or you can type in LA on your keyboard. Excuse me. That will bring up. Excuse me. I apologize. So LA will bring up your layer properties manager. So this is where you can see all of your layers, create new layers, delete some existing layers, and modify your layers as you choose, as you so choose. So first things first, layers are used so that if you have multiple different objects that you are drawing in your drawing, you can have multiple objects drawn, and you can, let's see, I'm trying to figure out how to describe this best that it makes sense. So that you can turn some off and keep some on, so that you have things such as a good example would be like a full set of drawings for a building. For that, you're going to have HVAC, electrical, plumbing, mechanical. You'll have the architectural. You'll have the furniture plan, all kinds of stuff. And if you had all of that information on one drawing, that would be incredibly confusing and nobody would be able to understand it. So you could create a layer for each one of those: plumbing, mechanical, electrical. You can do your ceiling plan, your furniture plan, anything. You could have a different layer for each one of those. So you could turn some of them off, so you can have a plan specifically for plumbing, one for mechanical, one for electrical. You can have separate plans and it doesn't clutter up your drawing. Layers are used to clean up your drawing. Specific layers could have different line types, and I will go over that momentarily. They can have different colors, they can have different names, and as I said before, you can turn them on and off. So, stand by just a moment. So as my computer decides to freeze. My apologies. My computer just froze. So now I got to get back into that window so that I can bring something up. So this is something that I created. Um, this shows all of the layers and various layers that I have on my template, and then it also shows the line types and colors of different ones. These are not exact, it varies based on company or personal preference. So I'm going to quickly go through the different line types. So this first one is an object line. That is the continuous line type in AutoCAD. That is used for all objects that you can see, typically in mechanical drawing. That is used for all objects that you can see, and surfaces and edges and stuff like that. Hidden lines are for things that are in the drawing but are behind an object, or for example, in the civil field, you could use it for things that are underground or below concrete or something like that. Center lines are used to specify the center of a hole going through a part. You show two hidden lines showing that hole, and then you can have this center line type, which is a long dash, short dash, long dash, short dash, and so on. And that would tell everyone reading the drawing that that is the center of that hole. And there is these two are not important. That is specific to this template that I created. Phantom lines. So phantom lines are typically in mechanical drawings. They are used for objects that are moving, or they could be used for section lines. In some cases, so for civil, they are used for property lines, or easements, or things in that matter. And then these two are not important. These two are different. This is specific to my template that I had created. So under your layer properties manager, there is all of these different tabs for different types of, or the organization of your layers and what specifically is being demonstrated in each one of those columns. So under line type, if you were to click on that, do a single click, that would bring up your select line type dialog box. And this is where these are the loaded line types, the ones that have already been loaded into the drawing. And if you want to load a different one, you can select load, and it will bring up another dialog box. And this is all of the standard line types that AutoCAD is preloaded with. So there are center, center 2, center x2, dash dot 2, and so on, dashed, divide, dot, and the list just keeps on going. So you can select one of those when you are loading it, hit OK, and then it will show up in your loaded line types. And if you want to change the line type for a specified layer, you would just select on that line type and press OK. And as you can see, it is now under center 2. Change that back because I want it to be continuous. By default, every single drawing starts out in basic AutoCAD. Every drawing starts out with just layer 0. Layer 0 in mechanical drawing, and it is not very good practice for everything else to draw things on layer 0. So generally you want to create your own layer and draw on that layer that you have created. And then going through these different columns. So this next one would be the color. There are 9 default colors: red, yellow, green, cyan, blue, magenta, white, and then 2 different grays. And then moving to the left is your plot. So this makes it so that the specified layer will print or not print. In this case, they're calling it plotting. That is a universal term. And then this is the lock. So this makes it to where you cannot change any objects that are drawn in the drawing if the layer is locked. You cannot change the color, the line type. You can't change the name. It is locked. It is set to be that and that only. Then moving along to the left, then this one is freeze. So you can freezing it turns it off or makes the line disappear. It is not gone from the drawing. It still exists in the drawing. It is just not showing up on your screen. And then there is turning it off. Turning off a layer would turn it off in all of your layouts. Freezing it would just turn it off in specific layouts. And then the next one is your name. Or the name, not your name, the name of the layer. And then off to the right, you have line type, and these ones we will not be talking about right now. That will be talked about in the future. And then up here, there is this is the button to create a new layer. That is the little sun. There's like a little sun shape right next to it. Then there is new viewport VP frozen in all viewports. So that creates a new layer where anything drawn on that layer will be frozen in all of your layout tabs or every viewport that you create. Viewports will be talked about in the future. This is delete the layer. This is how you delete the layer. And this is how you can set the current layer. So anything highlighted in blue, the green check is your current layer. Anything highlighted in blue is the layer you select. And then you can click that and it will set it to your current layer. So that is your layers. Typically, good practice is to create a layer and have it named so that anybody who looks at the drawing and checks the layer of an object will know exactly what that object is supposed to be. It is very bad practice to have a generic name and not so then all of your objects are all on this generic layer and you don't know what anything is, especially when you get into larger drawings. So next thing we're going to talk about, and the last thing we're going to talk about, is object properties. So object properties, if you were to, so mine is already open. So if you type in, yeah, so you type in prop. I like to keep my properties open and docked to the side of my window and always open so I can see it. That is just my personal preference. But these are object properties. So I'm just going to draw a circle here and I'll do an arc. There we go. So we have a couple different kinds of objects. So as you can see in your properties, up at the top it says what type of object it is. So this one's an arc. It says the color, which is set to by layer. So the layer that it's on is hidden. You can see that here. And then the color for that is yellow. And then you can see the line type is set to by layer, which in this case is -2 for hidden. And then the line type scale, that is not something that we will be talking about. Plot style, we will not be talking about. Line weight, transparency, hyperlink, and thickness, we will not be talking about. And then we will also not be talking about 3D visualization because that is 3D and we are not going to be talking about 3D in this course. The next thing is the start x coordinate, which would be this one. That is the first point that I selected. The y coordinate, the start y coordinate. So the y coordinate here start X coordinate. And then there is the center X, which is that, center Y, which is there, and center Z is at 0 because we're doing everything that is 2D. And then it shows the radius, shows the start angle, the end angle, the total angle, arc length, area, and then the normal X, Y, and Z. So that is object properties. And for this one, it shows that it is a circle and it has the center X, Y, and Z, the radius, diameter, circumference, and area. So that is for circles. That's some of the information that shows. And then for polylines, there is, says it's a polyline, and then it has vertex X and Y, start segment width, end segment width, and global width. And then it has elevation, area, and length. And then it also does tell you if it is a closed polyline. And that is week 4. Stand by while I end the recording.